Welcome to Smart, Amazing Conversations with Dr. Nancy, a podcast that takes a look at stories of life and leadership for smart, amazing women and men like you.
The way I can give support to the world right now is by showing up. The most important thing is don't think just that you have to bring anything. Bring yourself, show up.
If you are in a position of leadership and a position of management, bring women along with you.
Supporting women is Dr. Nancy's passion and her purpose, and talking with other women and men who promote women's leadership is one of her favorite things to do.
I've yet to meet a woman who did not know what she really wanted. She was just either afraid to ask the questions or she was afraid of what the answers meant.
Their stories connect us and help us understand that the possibilities are endless if we support each other and lift other women up.
Trust is created by persistent identity. I show up in my conversations. I build relationship. I show up as myself time and time and time again. And trust is built. It's one conversation at a time.
Darcy J. Totten is the interim executive director at the California Commission on the Status of Women and Girls. With over 20 years of experience in crisis communications, journalism, public policy, and external affairs. In 2019, she became interim director of operations at the Commission, later taking roles as communications director and director of external affairs, leading efforts focused on women's economic recovery from COVID-19. Darcy has built nationally recognized communications, including authoring the award-winning original research report, California Women's Economic Blueprint for Pandemic Recovery. She co-founded Activism Articulated, a crisis communications firm in Sacramento, serving changemakers nationwide. Darcy is also a board member for the Sacramento LGBT Center, Leadership California, and the Stonewall Democrats PAC Board. An alumnus of several leadership programs, she was named one of Sacramento Business Journal's Women Who Mean Business for 2023. Darcy holds degrees from Mills College and the University of Texas at Austin and lives in Sacramento with her wife and what she says are too many cats. Now here's Dr. Nancy and her guest, Darcy J. Totten.
Thank you so much for being with me. Good to see you again. It's been a few months, but a lot of things are going on. Some really good things are going on right now. I'm kind of excited. I haven't been very hopeful for a while, but a few things have happened in the last 24 hours or so that I'm actually kind of hopeful. But we'll talk about that some other time, hopefully. But anyway, this is a very exciting time, and I think Mount St. Mary's was such a wonderful event to the status of women and girls, especially in California, but all over the United States. The more we know, the more we have awareness, the more we can do about it. But anyway, welcome. Thanks for being with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, the most important thing that I usually start these conversations with is I want to know about you. This time is really for you. And the most important thing that we do is we tell our stories to each other. When women share their stories, anything is possible. So how did you get to be you, the person I'm talking to today? And then all these amazing things that you're doing, one thing after another. I mean, 20 years experience. I mean, you've just been out there working very, very hard. But how did you get inspired? How'd you come to be yourself?
I love this question, and also I haven't yet perfected the short answer, so bear with me. And that it was just a little bit of a journey, right? So I actually I talk about this sometimes when I give speeches, particularly to young people, that I often find myself surrounded by people who are kind of groomed for life in politics, and I very much was not. I, snuck in the back door, stumbled in the front a few times, and then kind of looked around and went, oh, I'm still here. Okay. So I actually, when I was very young, had a sort of harder upbringing. I had a mother who was not particularly excited when I came busting out of the closet at 14 years old. So I lived, I don't know, I guess you call it a bohemian life for a long time. I wasn't really sure I was going to live past 30. So I wasn't thinking about a career. I was thinking about survival. I was thinking about how I was going to pay rent. I was living 11 people, one bathroom with like a trapeze in the kitchen, sort of New York life. And bounced around. But what I did manage to do was go to college and go to graduate school during that time. And that probably saved my potential to do other things later on. But, in between, it's like living in a van, or well, it wasn't a van, it was a pickup truck with a camper shell, but same concept. Driving around the country taking photos. Like I wanted to be a photojournalist. So I was working for all of these little magazines and all of these little independent.
But you were
right.
You were in a band, is that what you said?
Oh no, sorry, not a van, but like a pickup truck with a camper shell.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Of course.
And just driving around the country taking photos. I wanted to be a journalist, and I went to school for journalism, and I thought, okay, I'm going to be a reporter and I'm going to tell people sort of what's going on in the world. And instead, what I ended up doing was driving around the country, meeting all different kinds of people, and just completely falling in love with all of them, even the ones that were really, really different from me. Working in nonprofits, working in entertainment, working this whole sort of big, crazy spectrum of different positions. And so when I came back to Sacramento, where I had grown up, because my parents, I lost them both one right after the other, and I came home to take care of them. And when that happened, I found myself working at the local NBC broadcast affiliate, because it was the only job I could get that sort of paid halfway decently, that I had the skills for, where I could work nights. And that's sort of the beginning of where I started thinking about the gendered impact of just everything in our culture on people. I had to work nights so that I could pay the bills, so that I could also work days full time as a caregiver for my mother, because there just wasn't any system set up where I was going to have a whole lot of help. And if I hadn't had a partner, I probably couldn't have done it. I don't know what would have happened. And after a few years of that, I was back in Sacramento, and I was thinking, there ought to be a law kind of a thing, and started getting more interested in public policy and how advocacy worked. I've always done communications. I started a company focused on some of the things I had learned over the years in my many different sort of, issue areas and skill sets, that was focused on crisis communications and specifically crisis management. And it just so happened that that company was up and running when it felt like the world exploded, right? I was there to help my community through some pretty intense public tragedies. A local man was killed by police, and just sort of everything kind of was very difficult around that. Women's March was one of our clients. We also helped build the first Black Women's March as a response to some of the challenges there. We worked for the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe as they were navigating the Dakota Access Pipeline protests. I mean, it was just it was right at the beginning of when, I guess, the internet makes jokes about living in unprecedented times for so long, and now we're all very tired of that, right? So did that until I absolutely burnt myself out. And I thought, okay, I still want to do some good in the world. I want to be of service, but I can't do it 24/7. And I started looking at what it would look like to go work for the state. And I found the commission.
Right. Well, the commission, California Commission on the Status of Women and Girls, is phenomenal. We attended a conference together last, I guess, April. God, it seems like it was, I don't know, in some ways it seems like it was a lot longer ago. I guess there's just been so many things going on, but over 600 people sat in that room. And I truly believe that there was just so much electricity and energy in that room that everybody was completely pumped up. And these are some stats, of course, that we hear about, but until we actually start to hear about things that impact us, we don't do anything. But only 2% of women and girls programs receive funding. About only 2%. The same is true of women and investing. So in our country, we have very, very little. We don't invest, and we don't really put the money where it's most needed with girls and women and investors, women investors, the women that are sitting at the tables, the decision makers. So the status of women and girls was so very important to when you really started looking at the stats yourself. I mean, like I said, you got burned out because you're an advocate, you're a go-getter, and you want to make a difference in the world. But when you really started to look at those statistics, what for you personally was the most impactful thing that you were seeing?
So I've been really honored to be able to contribute to that report, the Status of Women report, for several years in various capacities. Last year was the first year I got to actually contribute a whole article that was mine. It was exciting for me. But so starting in about 2021, I think, is when we started writing. I was in a different position at the commission, and currently it's interim executive director, but it's communications director first, and then it's director of external affairs. So right when COVID hit, we received funds from the legislature to stand up a program that we called the Women's Recovery Response Program. It was a pretty massive grant program that was designed to help organizations that served women and girls up and down the state, because we could see that women were being hit hard and fast by the pandemic. And as part of that, we were able to use some of those funds to build out a pretty significant original research project focused on the economy and what happened to women in this sort of state of emergency. So I, of course, was like, hey, I know this is my background. Crisis management is my, let me take the lead on this. And then, of course, fell down a rabbit hole. Turns out I also like economics. And so I got very excited. We were able to work with the California Policy Lab and some other partners at the California Research Bureau, and really take a very, very close look at what happened to women, and not just sort of women as a whole. We disaggregated by race, by LGBTQ status, by disability as much as we could. We wanted to see what happened to diverse groups of women in this situation. And the numbers were just absolutely staggering. I mean, we saw women, like 25% of women in the state had lost jobs initially. And we were seeing just massive impacts to women and families, and particularly women of color. We were seeing whole industries lose women, workers, in places where women had dominated those industries. So the industries themselves were really suffering, right? We make up something like, I'm not going to make up the numbers because I don't have them in front of me, but more than 80% of teachers, and significantly more than that of nurses. So when women start falling out of those workforces suffer, and it impacts everybody. But yet, when you look at it, I mean, we all know this, right? We don't pay teachers a whole lot. It's not a thing that we do. And so I started really getting interested in, why is that? What is happening here, where we have these incredibly valuable people who are half the population and half the workforce, but we are consistently and persistently underpaying them, undervaluing them. We don't promote them. We endlessly offer them opportunities to be mentored, but we don't give them money or power, which are frankly the things they need. And so that really kind of started me off on a multi-year exploration of what that is, and why that is, and what the commission can do about it.
Well, and I guess the pandemic was something that really impacted women and girls probably more than any other population. We know that, and still trying to recover from that. The jobs, as you said, the jobs that women were let go first. Many of the women were let go first. Childcare, women trying to work and have childcare. I mean, it was one issue after another, and then hit Roe versus Wade. We really lost a lot of years. We were really making a great impact, and then the pandemic hit, and then some of the other legislation that has been passed has really impacted women and girls. But it's, well, I guess the question is that, are we seeing any kind of recovery that really is making an impact at this point? I mean, I left the Mount St. Mary's with a lot of hope, because there was a lot of talking about money. Money was a really big issue, and that's what we need. Money is a vehicle, and I mean, I spoke also, but money is a vehicle. It's a tool. But again, investing in women and girls is something that we definitely have to do. But where do you think we are in the recovery process? Because again, we're going into a major election, and I know a lot of people are very hesitant about making any decisions right now based on who's going to be where in leadership position. But where do you see us at this point? Because again, we were talking in April, here we are in July, almost August, but where do you think we are right now?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm really hopeful for where we are right now. And we are seeing things happen that it makes it feel a little bit like we're at a crossroads more than anything. That we have an opportunity here to, push women's equality forward 100 years into the future, or roll it back 100 years into the past. And we're going to have to make that choice. But we get to make the choice, and that is really powerful. I think that when we talk about money, the biggest thing, the biggest challenge is a persistent pay gap, and particularly a pay gap that impacts women of color much differently. It's different across sort of demographic lines, and this is actually one of the things I talk about a lot. That the concept um, of addressing these shortages, we've always put them in sort of moral terms, right? That it's wrong. Well, of course it's wrong, right? It is unethical to pay people less money than you would pay a white man. It just is. It's wrong. But if the moral argument was going to work, it would have worked by now, right? What we try to do at the commission is put a dollar sign on these arguments. We try to have the economic argument. It's bad for everybody. It's bad for business. You mentioned childcare earlier, and we talk a lot about women needing to have childcare to go to work, but women also own most of those childcare businesses, and they're struggling because they need more investment. And it's childcare workers are mostly women of color, and they're paid less than dog walkers. We have to look at the whole big concept of industry and women's place in it, because these systems weren't designed for our participation. They were designed for men, and we've sort of, battered down the doors and said, let us in over the last 60 years.
Yeah.
But 60 years compared to the hundreds of years they've been in place, that's not a lot of time. So the other big thing that we really sort of tried to highlight is that if you closed the pay gap, you would make a measurable difference just to our state's economy. So one of the big takeaways from the California Blueprint on the for women's economic pandemic recovery that we put out at the tail end of 2022 was that if you just paid all California working women and working mothers, particularly, exactly what you pay men doing the exact same jobs, you'd reduce the poverty rate for working women by 40% in this state. That's massive.
40%.
Just by closing the wage gap that shouldn't be there in the first place.
Yeah. Well, my background with Women Connect for Good is all about gender equity and equality. So, for me, when I look at the numbers, especially with the status of women and girls, really, it makes me angry, but it also makes me know that we've all got to come together. We've got to work together. And that's men, women, and boys, girls. We all have to get on the same page. And one of the things I think that was fantastic about the commission and the status of women and girls at Mount St. Mary's was the number of partnerships. And we know that we're not going to get anywhere alone. And of course, the status of women and girls understands that probably better than anyone, that it's going to be a matter of bringing as many organizations to the table to collaborate, to share resources, and to build on whatever resources we can work on as well. So what are your thoughts, and what's the commission doing about your partnerships? And that event would not have happened, by the way, without you all and the commission being a part of that. So I know that was phenomenal to bring so many organizations together. But again, let's talk about collaboration. Let's talk about coming together.
At this point, it's going to have to be all of us for all of us, right? This is a women for women, even women that are very different from you, women you disagree with, women you don't know, right? We all have to sort of get in it together, which is a big breakaway from the last 10 or 15 years. We need to figure out how to do sort of solidarity politics correctly. We need to figure out how to do it right. And one of the things that I've loved doing for the commission is building our partnerships. So prior to stepping into the role of interim ED, that was a big part of my role, was building partnerships. So one of those is, of course, we have a formal partnership with Mount St. Mary's University that I'm incredibly excited about. We actually have a couple of We have another event coming up in the fall that's going to be focused on youth and the Equal Rights Amendment that I cannot wait for, because that is something else that we are really invested in right now, right? Is what are the structural changes we need to go after to really shore up the ability for women to thrive. And one of those is we need to be in the Constitution, especially now. But we've also built partnerships. We've built partnerships with youth organizations. We've built a youth advisory council. We've built partnerships with research organizations and bodies, or we're going to be releasing something in September that I'm incredibly excited about with the California Budget and Policy Center called the Women's Wellbeing Index, which has been updated. And we'll be able to talk a little bit more about that closer to September. But essentially, it's going to offer county level data on how women are doing to every single county in the state. And that's invaluable.
Yeah. Well, let me go back to the ERA. I'm actually on the board of the ERA coalition. So, and that's a fairly new position that I took on after the status of women and girls. I don't know if you remember Zacchaeus sitting there. Zacchaeus Thomas, who is the CEO and of the ERA coalition. A lot of people still do not know that we haven't passed it, or that it's not a part of the Constitution. Some people don't even know what it is, and I think that's one of the things that really has become more and more apparent to me and Women Connect for Good, is that we have to educate. We have to continue to educate, put information out there, and to let people know what is going on. And, the last 24 hours, I've actually been a little bit more hopeful to, not enough, one of our slogans for the ERA coalition is not another 100 years. 100 years is way too long. But the fact is that people do not understand that the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment, as the 28th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, would affect everyone. It really is about all of us. It's not about that's so important for us to continue to understand. But once the ERA is published in the Constitution, then we have to interpret it. Then we have to understand it. That's when coming together is going to be more important than ever, and understanding that we really have to invest in the places that are most important, which is the status of women, and proving that. So, we've got our work ahead of us, but like you said, I'm a little bit more hopeful than I have been in the last few months, but that is a wonderful thing. So hopefully we can get you more involved with the RA coalition, and we've got some things that are coming up, and so there's more and more partnerships that we can continue to work with each other on. So I'm excited.
We did a great event with the coalition in May, and with Mount St. Mary's. That was really, really exciting. I will say this, the sort of work around the ERA is one of the best examples I have for what I mean when I talk about a politics of solidarity, right? That the women's movement in the 70s, I think we sort of collectively acknowledged mistakes were made, right? It wasn't for everybody, and we had splintering, and everybody was not sort of aligned. So part of what I get excited about are things like the ERA become tools where we can address intersectional gaps, right? The ERA is sort of tailor-made for the pay equity question, right? If we have this constitutional prohibition against discrimination on the basis of sex, we can go after those pay gaps. But the most interesting thing about that to me is that that white women make, I don't even have the numbers in front of me. It's like 79 cents now this year to the dollar for every dollar white men make. But Black women are coming in at 61 cents. Latinas are coming in at 58 cents. And this sort of nature of intersectional, lenses on this would indicate that in a court case on this, it's not possible to articulate which is the driving factor necessarily. Is it sex discrimination or racial discrimination? Because it's both, and they're so intertwined that if you solve for one, you're going to have to solve for the other if you have that. We can close racial wealth gaps in a generation using a tool designed for sex equality. We can do both. we can take a very different approach to this, where we are intentionally including all women in this fight and making sure that we're prioritizing women who have historically been overlooked.
Yeah. Well, the ERA coalition is definitely an example of that, as far as a very diverse population working towards that. And, it has over 300 members. So it really is a wonderful organization and collaboration. And as you said, all women. And that pay gap is huge, from white women to Black women to Latinos. I mean, we've got to correct that as quickly as possible. So, okay, well, the commission's doing some many things, but one of the questions that you shared with me was that every woman should know about, but how can every woman help to improve circumstances for all of us? How can we as women today, I mean, sometimes there's simple things. What we're doing today is probably more profound than anything. It's creating awareness. But what can women who oftentimes will say, well, I don't know what to do, or I don't have that power, or I don't have that information or that education. What can women do today?
Starting today, they can make sure that they are involved and actively engaged in their local political processes all the way up through national processes. Every vote's going to count hugely for every election moving forward. And I want to be clear that I just mean participation on its own is actually huge. We need people to participate. Participation doesn't start and stop with voting, though. It is, are you excited about a candidate in your district who's running for a local office, and can you volunteer a few hours a week? It is, are you encouraging other people who have just soured on our whole democratic experiment to give it one more go and to participate? Additionally, I think that it's really important that women in particular make an effort to meet other women, to talk to other women who are not like them, right? We have been sort of brutally siloed for years, for decades, through sort of sociocultural, like mechanisms that are no individual, like it's not up to any individual person to sort of fix those. But what you can do is get out of your own sort of comfortable circle of people and learn how other women are thinking about things and how they feel about things. And you can figure out whether or not, regardless of whether or not you agree with them, somewhere in there are points of commonality. There are elements where we are all going to need to work together for each other. And how do you do that? One of our partnerships at the California Commission right now is with the Secretary of State's office on a project called Promote the Vote. So this is a social media campaign where we are particularly encouraging women to vote, that we want to turn out the vote for women across the country. I think we might have a little more help with that than we had initially thought we would now. But the idea being that different women are going to have different needs and different reasons for voting, right? Women over 50, there's polling done that show that women over 50 feel horribly unheard and unlistened to, and not like their issues are being addressed. We need them to vote. But you get the almost exact same responses for women under 25 who are voting age. So right there, we've got wildly different groups of people with this one thing in common: they don't feel heard. And how can we help both of those groups come together to feel heard, right? That's kind of what I mean. We're trying to figure out, how do we support everybody in figuring out how we can all sort of work together towards equality.
Yeah. Well, Women Connect for Good was founded on that basic premise, but it was women just supporting other women. I mean, it was a simple concept, and of course that continues to be the most important thing that we're doing today, and that's supporting women of color, women of every race, every economic background, and that we support each other. It's so simple that today, there's a woman in your life that is struggling with something, whatever it might be. It could be money, it could be emotional, it could be whatever. Call them today, pick up the phone. We can do so much, but then, we can also then talk about how we need to work together to be all we can be in this country. And you and I both know if we had more leadership positions in this country right now, we'd probably be in a lot better shape. There's no doubt about it. So,
there's one other piece that I want to add to this, and it's something I learned from one of our commissioners, Lieutenant Colonel Erica Courtney. She's a NATO trained gender advisor, and I was very, very honored that she was able to help me get into training done here by the California National Guard on becoming sort of a gender focal point advisor, which is a step on that ladder. And the idea is just this concept of using a gender lens to examine problems that we might automatically assume are gender neutral, and having this understanding that nothing is. Again, because none of our systems were built to include women, nothing's really gender neutral. So when your local municipality is having a conversation about, I'll use an example from my neighborhood. They're redoing a big, busy boulevard near my home, and they're, putting out a call for public opinion. And I showed up and was able to provide the input that particularly women have maybe a different outlook on what's most necessary here, because a room full of men were really excited to plant extra bushes and trees, but weren't going to include any streetlights on this completely not well-lit street, right? There's a gender lens on everything. You just have to look for it. And women are, we're not automatically going to see it. We have to train ourselves to see it, but we're particularly well-suited to do that.
Yeah. Well, women, we've always been the problem solvers in our homes and in our communities, but a lot of women don't give themselves credit for that. So I think that gender lens is more and more important. But again, women need to give themselves credit and a pat on the back for all the things they do also in their communities.
And we need to hold men accountable for showing up for us too. It's only been 24 hours, but I'm hearing lots and lots of people all over the place talk about how women need to turn out to vote. And I'm thinking, well, men need to turn out to vote for us. I don't care what election we're talking about. Men need to come to us and vote for us and bring us in. We've more than proven that we are capable.
Well, Darcy, I hope that we're at a turning point, a good turning point. As you said, the crossroad. I think we are at a crossroad, but I think things have changed, and I think they're going to continue to change. But organizations like yours and ours that come together to create that more awareness and understanding, and bringing more and more people to the table, men and women to the table, and the decision makers to continue to improve our quality of life in all aspects. All I want to do is to live in a better world. I don't know about you, but when I stop and think about it, it's just really living in a better world, a safe place, a place that I can have good health care. I can have if I want education, whatever that might be, but I want that for my daughters. I want to leave them a legacy of that and more, and then their daughters and their children, the children after them. I want to read your overall message because I think it's very important. And this is what you have said your overall message is. I want women to know they are over mentored, plenty empowered, and the furthest thing than from being imposters. They are underinvested, underpaid, and underestimated, and it is time for that to change. So I think that's it. We've got a lot more talents, a lot more our abilities than we give ourselves credit for. And I think when we support each other and pat each other on the back, and we realize that we do have these abilities. We do come from a place of abundance, not one of scarcity. And I think that's the other key, is really boosting women up in such a way that they come to the table and they go to vote and they say, my voice is important, my decisions are important, and I can make a difference in this world. That's what this is about. So, one of the things I know that we've talked about this before, but the Lift Women Up campaign is extremely important, something that we're doing at Women Connect for Good. We have a Facebook page, but we continue to, we send out 52 weeks. Every day, every week is a new way to support and lift another woman up. This week is about pay gap. In fact, we're right on target but we have to educate ourselves. Nobody knows that white women have less pay gap, have a pay gap, but they don't realize Black women have even more of a pay gap, or Latinos have more of a pay gap. But we need to educate. But when we lift each other up, anything is possible. You can put 5 women in a room, and I can guarantee you we're going to get it done, and we're going to make a difference. So, Darcy, you and I have work to do. We're not done, but the good thing is that, you know, we're building a community, a like-minded community of some amazing men, women who are going to make a difference. And hopefully everybody gets out to vote. I think people are more positive about voting than they were last week or 2 days ago. But anyway, what are your final thoughts? Because again, we're not done. We have more things to do. The commission and what you're doing is so very, very important. Your upcoming event in September. What would you like to share here towards the end of this conversation?
Well, I have 2 things. One is I would like to point out that it is almost Moms Equal Pay Day, and mothers across all racial and gender gaps have a pay gap as well. So we also have to invest in some of the unique ways that women show up, experience the world. But the last part is, it's pretty much what you read, and I just want to reiterate this. I work with so many young people. I talk to so many young women who are just starting out, and they're so nervous. They're so scared that there's a playbook, that they're doing it wrong, that they're going to show up and be judged badly. And the thing is, you totally are, because people endlessly judge women. And the whole point is, it doesn't matter. We are still absolutely paving the way. We are braving new trails. We are making a way where there was absolutely no way. So any way you're doing it is correct. You are already right on target, and just keep showing up. This is, democracy is a team sport. This is a participatory system that we're in. You've got to participate. You've got to show up.
Showing up is it. 99% of it. Absolutely.
Well, and showing up for each other, right? If you aren't sure that you're going to get something out of it, maybe somebody else might. Maybe you can show up for somebody else who can't actually be in the room.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to show up for you, and you're going to show up for me, and we're going to do some amazing things and continue to do some amazing things. So I want to thank you for your time, your energy. I mean, you're doing so much for so many organizations, and women and girls. I think we're definitely going to make some headway, and I'm looking forward to the future more so than I did in the past. I mean, since the commission, the status of women and girls, definitely that was a boost for me. But again, being on the ERA coalition, we not only when we come together we can do so much, it's also a lot more fun when we work together too. So I look forward to spending more time with you and getting to know you. We'd love to send you more information about the Lift Women Up campaign, and then the way that you can continue to join that community, which is, again, supporting other women. That's what this is about, supporting other women. And we have to have mothers that have daughters who support one another as well. So it's all a learning process. But again, the imposter syndrome, none of us are imposters. We're not imposters. We are all learning each and every day how to be who we are and how we can be with others. So thank you for everything you do. Any final words that you'd like to share? Anything?
Just please get involved, and particularly if you haven't been involved, now's the time. We have some pretty amazing opportunities ahead of us, and I know that if we work together, we can make great things happen for women and girls. Let's go.
Don't be shy. Get out there. Show up.
Exactly.
Darcy, thank you so much for your time. I know this is only one time that we're going to be speaking together, but there'll be many other times as well. So I look forward to developing a great partnership with you and the organization, all the other organizations that are doing so much. Have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoy these smart, amazing conversations, please subscribe, rate, and review them on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And read and enjoy more amazing stories in my books, In This Together, How Successful Women Support Each Other in Work and Life, and Leading Women, 20 Influential Women Share Their Secrets to Leadership, Business, and Life. Thank you for listening.